So, um, is it really on the last one? Okay. Let me get to, sorry, y'all. Here we go. Okay. So, I'm going to start off with a review from the first class, and then we'll move into this class. So I feel like I don't have to tell y'all. I didn't create most of this material. It was the majority, especially the visuals, are from John Gringo. He's on Creative Live. That's where I found him. But don't have any questions before we start? No? Yes? You look like you do. Okay. Well, we'll start then. Okay. So we're starting off with a pop quiz immediately. So what's the most important element in photography? Lighting or exposure? And if you want to get a camera, you don't have a camera with you, you can use this camera. And I also have a 70 to 200 lens, but just in case you want, this camera was acting a little bit weird earlier today, so anyway, just in case. Okay. So the most important element in photography is exposure. And then what is aperture? I want either Tammy or Zeph to answer. In focus and how much is not. And then it also has, how does it impact the exposure or the lighting? Yeah, so the aperture is the f stops, so you'll always see the f in front of it. And so what if it's a f stop that's like f 1.2? Would that let in more light, or would like f11 let in more light? 1.2? Why? Yeah, the bigger the opening. Okay, perfect. What is shutter speed? Yeah, how fast the shutter opens and closes. And so if you have a slower shutter speed, what will that do if your subject is moving? Yeah. And if you have a subject that's moving fast and you have a fast shutter speed, what will it do? It'll freeze it. Yeah, freeze it in motion. Tammy's doing really well. Okay, I know you know most of these answers already too, but and then Zeph, how does shutter speed impact exposure or the light? If it's a slow shutter speed, would it be brighter? Yes. The longer the shutters open, the more light can come in. The faster, it allows less light. So good job. What is ISO? Yeah, it's basically it's, I remember it like, is the sun on? So if you're in a bright situation, you don't need your ISO to be high. You could turn it to like 100. You're good. But if you're in a dark situation, you need to turn your ISO up, and it'll allow, the bigger the number on ISO, the more light you let in. The lower the number, the less light on ISO only. And then, so aperture impacts your lighting and the focal area. Shutter speed impacts your lighting and if it's going to be blurred or not. What about ISO? It impacts your lighting and what else? India? This was a trick question last time. It doesn't do anything else. ISO is just lighting. It doesn't do anything else. Just lighting. So I had that same question last time, but it's been a little while. Okay, so this one has a lot to cover, this slide. So it shows how each setting impacts your exposure. So the auto and scene modes each have their own purpose and they can be used, but I would not recommend them in most situations. Exposure compensation is another, that's further down here, but exposure compensation is also something that we discussed at the last class. And has anyone found it or used exposure compensation at all? You remember? Okay. So it's one of the, if you are looking at your exposure meter on the bottom, when you're looking through your viewfinder, you'll see the exposure meter and exposure compensation. If you do the plus, it's going to give you more light. And if you do the minus, it's going to give you less light. And it's going to slide your, the little needle that's on the meter, either to the right or the left, making it brighter or darker. So that's like another way to boost up your, exposure without changing any of your other settings. And once you set that, it's going to continue doing that until you change it. So if you get in a different situation, you could bump it down if you wanted to, or back up, whichever you needed. So that's the setting that you need to adjust according to what you're capturing. You can brighten it or make it darker by adding or reducing the exposure compensation. And so it will override that whole thing that your meter is trying to do. Remember, the meter is trying to get it to middle gray, which it's just trying to balance the scene. It's looking at how much black is in the scene, how much white. And it says if I merge those together, it's going to be perfectly balanced to 0 in the middle. But you can tell it, no, I need it to be a little bit brighter, and you can move it one stop to the right. Or you can say, I need it to be darker than this, and you can move it one stop to the left, or however many you need to. So our whole purpose in learning about all the settings that we have on our camera and about learning the exposure triangle is to be able to shoot in manual mode. That's the goal. So I'm sure all three of you know that, but it's the letter M. That's for manual mode. The other ones have their place. They can be used, but it allows the camera to make all the decisions for you. And since your camera doesn't have a brain, it's not very smart, and it's not really going to make the best decisions. You're better at making those decisions. So last time we covered this just briefly. Why is the date and time setting, why does it matter? You remember? setting the date and time. Why would you think that it's important? Do y'all know? I feel like India knows, but I want to ask y'all first. No? No, it doesn't impact that at all. No. Anything? Or you don't know? Tammy? That is one of the purposes, actually, yeah. And what's probably the main reason, do you think, India? Yeah. So the main reason I would consider the most important reason is because a lot of times there's more than one camera shooting the situation. It might be you're shooting with someone else, or it might be that you have two cameras and you're picking this one up and then you're going to this camera. And whenever you get ready to import all those pictures and edit them and then have them in a specific order that makes sense, um, if your date and time are not synced to the other cameras that were used, it's so mixed up, especially if it's a wedding where you're looking at 2,000 to 3,000 images. It's such a pain if that time, date and time was not synced. It just makes it a nightmare. So that's really the main reason. But the secondary reason is because you're going to store the pictures, and every single picture will have the date and time on it. And so if you're looking, and especially if you were shooting for like 10 hours, like you do at a wedding, if you're looking for a specific picture, you can go into all the pictures and then see, you'll know exactly where to go. Or you can search by date and you can search by time for a specific picture or a picture that was at the beginning or middle or end or on a specific date. If you look at pictures from 10 years ago, you're trying to find one. Like sometimes I'll look for a birthday that I'm like, I know we were all there. I remember. And I'll just go into where all my pictures are and do the search. And I put in that specific date from 5 years ago on someone's birthday. And then I find, okay, there they are. Those are all my pictures. So that's the other reason it is important. Okay, so we also covered this last time. Has anyone adjusted your diopter since we talked about this? Or do you remember what the diopter is? No? Do you remember, India? No? Okay, so since there's only three of you, this is pretty easy, but so if each one of you, yeah, that one doesn't have a lens cap on it, yours doesn't have a lens cap on it, you just would need to put your lens on, and then go ahead and turn your camera on, and then, okay. So on this one, when you put your eye up to the viewfinder, does it change? Yeah, it does. I'm going to take it back away from your eye for a second. This is the diopter. On this one, it's on the left-hand side. This is the diopter. And on yours, it's probably on the right-hand side. Do you have a diopter on this one? What is this? Do you know? Okay, look through your viewfinder. Everybody look through your viewfinder. Then get your thumb or your finger on that little roller for the two of you. Look through your viewfinder. You might have to push the button halfway down and then push your shutter halfway down. And then look at your exposure meter at the bottom. When you see that exposure going up with the diopter and down with it. Okay. But you don't have a diopter. What does this do? It's blurry. So you want to get your focal point on something. Like maybe get your focal point on this bag or here, this camera bag. Put it on a specific place, and like push your shutter halfway down to get that in focus, and then start doing your diopter until the exposure meter looks clear. Once it's clear, your diopter is set for your vision, for you. And then if somebody else uses your camera or if it's bumped, the only reason I'm showing you this is because sometimes you can't figure out why it's not in focus. You're like, man, it's still not in focus. I'm doing everything. And it's just your needs to be adjusted. So, yeah. It's not anything major, but it can make a difference. Did you get it? Got it? Okay. Where it looks clear? Okay. All right. Y'all can turn them off. We'll just keep going. Okay. So this is another slide that's going to cover several settings. First, we're going to talk about file types. So we're going to cover it more in detail in a minute, the file types. The next thing we have is the drive mode. So you can shoot in single, continuous, or use a self timer. Those are your drive modes. Sorry. I don't really use single shooting mode because I'm usually taking a lot of pictures quickly. But if you're in a shooting situation that doesn't require you to shoot quickly, you could use that mode. Continuous shooting just means just what it sounds like. You can take a lot of pictures quickly without any time in between or much time in between. So if you're shooting anything that's moving or happening quickly, you want to be in continuous shooting mode. And then, of course, the self timer is also self-explanatory. You would just do, set your timer for 10 seconds or 20 seconds, however long you want it to be. Come and get in front of the camera if you want, and then take the picture. You can also use it with a tripod if you're trying to get something. You've got your shutter to a really, really slow speed, and you don't want to touch it because that'll make it move. You can set your timer, go ahead and walk away and not be touching it, and it'll be steady. Let's see. And then the next thing that's up there is the white balance settings. We're going to cover those more in the next slide. And then last, we're going to talk about downloading, editing, developing, and storing your images, which we already talked about a little bit. And we're going to also go into that more in more detail. So I know, India, you have access to Lightroom, but if y'all don't have access to Lightroom, I would highly recommend that you get it. I know that, I don't know if they're still doing it or not, but Jen and Sister Saida were sharing a Lightroom. It costs $10 a month. So they were sharing an account. They might still be, I'm not sure, but they were each paying $5 a month for it. And you could obviously do that. Do you share yours with Jen? Okay. Well, anyway, so if you want to get in on that deal, you probably could. And then it would make it like $350 per person or $325 per person, whatever. But anyway, you can share Lightroom if you want, and I highly recommend that. You need a place to be able to edit your images, and Lightroom, to me, makes it really easy to do it. let's see. As far as storing your images, I recommend getting an external hard drive. Not organizing your images will definitely come back to bite you later. If you start taking a lot of pictures, you've got to store them in one specific place. So I brought this with me. This is my external hard drive. I have had this for probably, I don't even know, more than 10 years. Probably 10 to 15 years. They are, well, they're probably better now than they used to be, but these are like, if you drop them, it will mess it up. It's like a little computer in it. And I think this one, I don't even remember. I would have to look. I think it's only like a terabyte, maybe. But anyway, I haven't run out of space yet using it. And I have, my guess would be 50,000 images on there. Plus, I use it for work. I store stuff for work on there too. But anyway, I don't know how much these cost anymore because it's been so long. But I bought this at Best Buy for about 50 bucks. Probably somewhere between 10 and 15 years ago. So it's a good investment. It's a place, I have more than one, but it makes it so easy for me to just, it's not making my computer slow down by putting a bunch of stuff on my computer because it all goes to this. And yeah, I would definitely recommend that. So, y'all have any questions so far? Okay. Turn this sideways. All right. So, this is white balance. I know y'all are probably somewhat familiar with white balance. So of the three of you, when y'all are shooting, do y'all change your white balance very often? Or not really? Or does it depend? Yeah, auto white balance. So you can use any of the modes that white balance has, or like she was saying, you can leave it in auto white balance. I use mine. I usually leave mine in auto white balance as well. So you are letting the camera make those decisions for you. But if you get into situations, I've found that for me, it's more so about the lighting inside than it is outside. Usually it works pretty well outside, but when you get inside, if you have fluorescent lights, like kind of like these will give all of your pictures kind of a greenish tone. It'll make people's skin tone look a little bit green, and it's just not very pretty. But if you put the setting on fluorescent mode, it'll adjust for that. So, or if you're using tungsten lights, which is like the light bulbs at most houses that are not the white blue color, they're more of a yellow orange color. You put it on that setting and people's skin tone won't look yellow orange. And so anyway, I use the different modes. Obviously the one that says daylight that would be if it's sunny or it's bright outside. The cloud symbol is if it's cloudy, overcast. And then the one with the house is for shade. If you're taking pictures in the shade, you should definitely put it in that mode. And then if you're in a lighting situation indoors with any of these going on, you can put it in that mode and it'll adjust for that specific lighting situation. Okay, so now we're going to get back into talking about RAW versus JPEG. So y'all know the difference between RAW and JPEG? You know what it is? No? Okay. So I'm going to let India kind of explain what the difference is. Pixel, every bit of detail. When you take the picture, so this is the way that I usually explain it. If you're shooting in RAW mode, so it's a setting on your camera, you should always be shooting in RAW versus JPEG or any other setting. Because when you're shooting in RAW, it would be like if you had a soda can and the can was just normal, like it was when you were going to drink out of it. And you can turn the can around, you can see every letter, you can see all the colors, you can see all the words, everything that it says, all the details, you can see it. But JPEG is a compressed version of RAW. So it would be like if you took that same can and you smashed it down, all the detail is still there. You didn't delete the details, you can't see it anymore. So it's a compressed version of it. And so when it comes to doing any kind of light editing, if you are using the RAW part, you can adjust all those settings really easily. If it was a JPEG, you're very limited on what you can do because it doesn't show all those details. They're there, but they're compressed so much that you can't really see them anymore. So you always want to shoot in RAW and then store it as a JPEG, or you can share it as a JPEG. And so yeah, that's what you want to, kind of the difference between RAW and JPEG. And then the next thing I want to talk about is memory cards. So if you're not currently importing your pictures like we were talking about to an external hard drive or someplace, if you're just keeping all the pictures that you take on the memory card, at some point you're going to get an error message on the memory card. You're going to turn your camera on, there's going to be an error message there, and the error message is going to say card error format. It's going to basically force you to format that memory card because it can only hold so much. And if you're not taking those pictures off and putting them somewhere else, you're leaving them on the memory card fills up, and then you're going to want to go take pictures and you're not going to be able to unless you delete some of the pictures off that memory card. So it's better to just like get in the habit of every time you take the pictures, you import them onto your computer. And then what I do is when I take the memory card out of my computer and I put it back in my camera, I immediately format it. Format it means to completely delete it from the memory card because I already have them somewhere else. And if you get in the habit of doing that, you don't ever have to worry about seeing that error message. And also, when you've had memory cards for a long time, it's like when you have anything else for a long time, they can get bumped or scratched or bent or messed up. You should always have a minimum of 2 memory cards no matter what. You should always have an extra one with you. On most of my camera straps, not that black and white one, but most of the other camera straps that I have, they have a little pocket that's a really small pocket, and I usually keep an extra memory card right there. That way, if I'm shooting and something happens, or I had done this before, this is the reason I did it, is I took my cameras, I'm going to shoot a wedding, and I get there, and there's no memory card inside my camera. So I can't even take pictures because, so I started carrying extra memory cards with me all the time and keeping them right there in my strap so I could just stick it in there. So it's just a good habit to get into. I also made shortcuts in my menus to format my card, so I don't have to go through the menu to find it every time. Do you already have yours? Do you have a shortcut for format, or do you format? You do it every time? Okay. Do you have a shortcut to it? I don't know if your camera will let you, but we can look at it. This camera already has it done. So do you want to turn this one on and then just go to the menu? I don't know much about this camera, but You want to turn it on and just go to the menu. So see how this one has a star on it? These are saved places in settings that I have already saved. You can see format card is right there. So the very last one with the star on it is your saved settings right there. So there you go. Anytime you want to format, it's saved in there for you. It's the very top one. I don't know if that's how you normally get to it or not, but these are your ones that have been saved at some point. Maybe I saved it, or maybe you did. I don't know. Let's see. So I don't know if you've looked through these settings or the menu, but the reason that I do this is because it takes forever to find stuff. You know, there's like so many. So you are in RAW, you're shooting RAW, that's great. And then I'm looking for format. So I'm going to see that. Do you have that? Yeah, I kind of remember for a Okay, so there it is, file format. So do you upload your pictures from your camera or do you leave them on your phone? Okay, so I'm not going to format yours right now because it'll delete everything that's on your report right now. But once you start uploading them off the memory card, you definitely want to make this like a shortcut and always format it every time. That way, that memory card will stay good for you. So here's the starting tip. All right. Let's see. All right. I think we talked about sensors last time a little bit, maybe. I really can't remember, but we're going to talk about the sensor and why it matters. So inside your camera, behind the lens and behind the mirror, if you have a mirror, camera that has a mirror, is where the sensor is. And this is where all the information is being recorded. So sensors are really, really important. They impact just about every part of your image. So they impact the pixels, they impact the color, they impact the dynamic range, and the processing time. So basically, the bigger the sensor, the more expensive the camera, but the better it is. So there's a full frame sensor, and then there's like a little super tiny one, which is the kind that are inside cell phones. So that's kind of the range of sensors. You have to decide what's most important to you. For a full frame sensor is 43 millimeters. A medium sensor is 27 millimeters, and you can see that they just get smaller from there. Going down to the smallest sensor, which is a 1 inch, which is like super tiny. But the 1 inch sensor doesn't actually measure an inch. It's just the size sensor. That's how they measure it. But here's a rule of thumb about which lens to choose based on the sensor size. So the number of millimeters on the sensor works best with the number of millimeters of your lens. So if you're shooting with a 50 millimeter lens, the best, if you're shooting with a full frame sensor, which is a 43 millimeter, the closest lens to that is a 50 millimeter. So if you take the sensor size and divide it by 2, it'll give you a good landscape lens. So if you're shooting with a full frame sensor and you divide that by 2, that'd be 43 millimeters divided by 2. That'd be around 21 millimeters. And so that's going to give you the best landscape view. If you take the sensor size and multiply it by 2, it'll give you a good portrait. So if you're shooting with a full frame sensor and you multiply that times 2, it would give you 86, or the closest lens to that is an 85 millimeter. And that's why an 85 millimeter is such a good portrait lens. But you can also use this, like you have a zoom lens. So if you know what you're trying to shoot, you can go to 85 millimeters when you're doing portraits, or you could zoom out to 24 or whatever it is when you're doing a landscape. And as long as you're shooting with a full frame sensor, you're good either way. Let's see. So the sensor size for sports lenses is like 4 times the sensor size. That's the size lens you would want to shoot with. And then wildlife is like 8 times the lens or the sensor size. So the larger the sensor, the more expensive the camera is going to be. Cheaper cameras have a smaller sensor. And it also impacts it in other ways. It crops it. You know, it showed up there the full frame versus a smaller sensor is going to be the blue, and the bigger sensor, the full frame, is going to be the red. That's what you're going to actually capture. All right, now we're going to talk about lenses and how they impact our photos. So there are many things that the lenses impact in your images. The angle of view, which is what you can see from side to side, or the depth, how far away. And then the light gathering ability, which is the aperture. The depth of field, which is also aperture. The image quality, which would be the sharpness and contrast and color. Vignetting and chromatic aberration. So those are things that I haven't really talked about at all, but vignetting, you know what vignette means? Do y'all know? Yeah. So sometimes, depending on your sensor and the lens that you're using, if they don't really match up that well, your lens and your sensor aren't a good match, then sometimes you'll get vignetting, which will make it all dark on all 4 corners. And depending on how mismatched they are, the more vignetting you'll see, the more dark around the edges you'll see. And then the less you see, the better that match is between your sensor and your lens. And so there are many different types of lenses, from ultra wide angle to normal, telephoto, and super telephoto. Examples of these are like 20 millimeter, 35 millimeter, 50 millimeter, 85 millimeter, and 400 millimeter. There's a difference between zoom lenses and prime or fixed lenses. So I know you use zoom lenses. So zoom lenses are more versatile. They take up less room because it's a smaller, you don't have to, instead of having 5 lenses, you can have just 1 if it's a zoom lens. And you don't have as much to take with you. And you don't usually need to change lenses as often if you're using a zoom lens. And then prime lenses are sharper. They'll give you a sharper image, and they're faster, and they're smaller than zoom lenses. So an important part of the lens is the focal length. And the focal length just means from the length of the front of the lens to the back of the lens. So a 50 millimeter is like a short lens. It's just considered a short lens. But a 400 millimeter is a long lens. And that's literally like, if you were to measure, that's all it is. They would measure from this point right here. So they would say, oh, that's a long lens. Once you have a short lens, once you have this, but you have a lens But anyway, it's just that measurement. That's all it is when you see 50 millimeter, whatever it is. That's all it's talking about is that lens right there. It's not really. But they all do different things, obviously. So, all right, we're going to get into. So this is all about angle of view, and it's kind of what I was talking about before. But when I'm just going to read it. The angle of view is determined by which lens you choose and the sensor size. So they go hand in hand. Each one impacts the other. So this example is from a horizontal angle of view. And as you shoot with a wider lens, you see a wider area from left to right when shooting landscape or horizontally. The foreground is also very noticeable, and everything in the distance seems really far away. As you get into longer lenses, you'll notice compression. It seems like it brings stuff that is really far away, it brings it closer to you. A 50 millimeter lens is the most common lens used when you want to show the true size and scope of your scene. These work really well for people photography. If you're shooting more than 2 subjects, it's a great choice. All the other lenses change the size and scope of your scene as you go wider or longer. 35 millimeter lenses are really practical, and they work well for landscape, street, or travel photography. The 24 millimeter is great when you don't need to cut anything out of the sides of your image. So it's really good for like landscape photography. The wider lenses will cause objects that are closer to you to be bigger in your scene. Longer or telephoto lenses will cut off the sides, but bring things that are far away closer to you. Does that make sense? Okay. So hopefully this will help you determine which lens to use depending on what you're shooting. So if it's architecture or real estate, that's a pretty wide range there, 14 millimeter to 85 millimeter. For me personally, I would always go with a wider lens if I was doing real estate or architecture, but landscape or nature, 14 millimeter to 200 millimeter. And you might wonder why you would need a 200 millimeter, but it's because sometimes you're shooting things that you can't get that close to, like the waterfall, but it's like way over there, and you want to get that picture of a waterfall, so that's why it would be the 200 millimeter. For travel, event, or street, candid, or wedding, 24 millimeter to 200 millimeter is like the perfect range. It's a really good range. And then for studio or portraits, 50 millimeter to 200 millimeters. Sports is 85 to 600, which those lenses are crazy expensive, by the way. So is wildlife. The longer those lenses are, they get like, it's like a $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 lens when you get to sports and wildlife. And they're like super long. They almost all of those will have a tripod or a monopod just for the lens that they use all the time because it's so long and so big and heavy. But anyway, yeah, you could probably get it with a 200 millimeter, but obviously if you were to go with a 400, 600, 800, it's going to bring it closer in because it's so far away. I mean, if it's a really bright moon and it's a full moon, you could probably get it with a 200 millimeter. But in order to get a really good shot, you would need a tripod and you would need to set it up, do a slow shutter speed to gather all that light in and have it zoomed as far as you can. But yeah, I think you could get it with 200. I've gotten some, but I just don't. I've never gotten really good ones because 200 is the longest lens I have, and so I've never gone outside on a really when it was a full moon and tried to set it up on a tripod to get it. And you have to be at kind of a good elevation too when you're shooting it because like when I was trying to the one time I did try to shoot it, I was doing it from my house and there were like houses and trees and all kinds of other stuff like in the way that kept I was like, no, I'm trying to get to the moon and I couldn't. So yeah. But if I would have had a, longer lens, that would have been amazing. Okay, so the lens you choose will depend on what you're shooting. The best way to determine how each lens impacts your subject is to practice. Find a stationary object. It can be anything. It can be a stuffed animal, a water bottle, whatever, and put different lenses on your camera and start shooting. There are recommendations when it comes to shooting different types of photography, but you'll probably find that you have a favorite lens for what you shoot the most. We also have to remember that the sensor size, again, it impacts your lens and what you're going to be able to get. So you have what? You have what is that one? Is it a 20? 70 to 300. I thought that was a camera for a second. 70 to 300, that's pretty good range. And then do you have any other lenses? So you just said just 50. So just like I was just saying, the 50 millimeter is one of my favorite lenses. I like the 50 millimeter. I like the 70 to 200, but if I don't know exactly what I'm going to be shooting, or if I want to go light, like today, I have my 50 millimeter on there. I use that one the most for me. It's really, to me, it's the most versatile and I like it a lot. But anyway, but for you, you use that lens more than you use the 50? Yeah, that's what I thought. So that's the thing is like you'll find out which lens you like the best. But I've done a ton of practicing too at home or wherever. I have done this exact thing where I literally just set up a water bottle and I stood in the same place and I would take a picture of the water bottle with one lens, not change my settings at all, put a different lens on there, take the exact same picture, put a different lens on there, take the exact same picture, and then see the difference. And depending on what you're trying to get, it'll show you. You'll learn so much by just switching out your lenses. But yeah, so you should definitely try that because I know you have a few lenses, right? Do you know which ones you have? Is that one that's on there? Is that a 50 millimeter? What is it? It'll either say it on the outside right there, or if you look at the lens part of it on the inside, it'll say it there. It usually says that. Yeah. So it usually says it. So right here. So this is at 35 millimeter. And then see, yeah. See how it says 1.8/35? 1.8 is the f-stop, and then 35 is the millimeters. So 35, and then that one is a 24. So those are both wide lenses, and then hers is the longer lens. But I have my 70 to 200, which is this one. And this is also, y'all use this before already. It's heavy. But even on this one, on the 70 to 200, that's what this is. This is for a tripod or a monopod. So if you wanted to help it keep steady, if you're taking some pictures, it I was going to do a little quiz, but I'm not going to yet. Not yet. But we can look up here too at the pictures and see like the super wide angle. So that's going to be like that range of 10 to 16 millimeters. And then wide angle would be 16 to 24. So it's that next, like the yellow. And then moderate wide angle would be the 24 to 35. And then normal or standard is 35 to 50. And the short telephoto would be 65 to 100. Medium telephoto is 135 to 200. And then long telephoto is going to be the 250 to 400. So, but you can see kind of like what each one does and what it allows you to see. But doing it with your own camera. And then this is talking about the sensors again, the 43 millimeter or full frame versus a crop sensor. So I think there's a way, I haven't really looked for it. The easiest way for me to do it, when I'm looking at cameras, I usually will Google the camera and I'll say, what size sensor does this camera have? And it'll tell you immediately, this is a full frame sensor, this is a 1.5 crop, it's a whatever size. So you'll know immediately. So if you're looking in the future to buy a camera, I would always recommend a full frame because of what it does and how it interacts with your lenses. Okay. Yay. Okay. So for this pop quiz, I want to find out, I want you to pick the best aperture, okay? So if you want to get a scene with everything in focus, from near to far in the entire scene, you want it all to be in focus. What aperture or f-stop would you want to be at? Zeph? So you have a range like yours. I think it was 1.8. Is that what it said on your lens? Okay. So I don't know what your full range is, but let's just say it was 22. So anywhere between 1.8 and 22, if you want to get everything in the scene in focus, would you want to be closer to 1.8 or 22? Okay, what do you say? 1.8? India? Let's just say we've got 3 people lined up, okay? Why don't, okay, we're going to actually put this into practice. I'm going to do this. Okay, I'm going to let Zeph choose. You're going to be the photographer. So Zeph is going to be the photographer. You two come over here with me. And Zeph, you're going to stand on the other side of the table with your camera. I want you to put your f-stop at 1.8. And if you need help at doing the other settings, I'll help you with those, get your ISO and your shutter speed to the right place. I don't know. So just kind of point it up here and do a test shot. And then we'll see if we'll get your lighting all settled. And then we'll go ahead and take it. it at 1.8? You have your. Perfect. Okay. So if you want everything on the scene to be in focus, what we're going to do is India, you're going to come back here closer to this. You stay about right where you're at, and then over a little bit this way, just a bit. And then I'm going to come right here. Now, try to get all three of us in the picture. And then it doesn't matter who your focal point is on, just put it on one of us. And take a picture. Okay. Can you see the picture? All right. So, can you zoom in? It's probably one of these. I don't know how to zoom in on this one. Is it a touch screen? Oh, this is probably this. See how it has the plus with that? So do that while you're looking at it. So you can kind of, yeah, now move it over using this. Go up to the faces. All right. Who did you have your focal point on? Okay. So move it over to my face. Okay. So all three of you got it wrong. All right. Y'all can look at that picture that you took. But basically, all right. So if you, I don't know how well you can see it on there, but if she had the focal point on me, I should be, my face should be pretty close in focus. But the two of you would not be in, the focus wouldn't be as sharp on the two of you. Because aperture is all about depth of field, okay? I thought of this way to explain that depth of field, that I was trying to explain it. I'm going to try to make a visual for my brain is full of he wants to learn. But, okay, this is how much I can sit back down. This is an easy way, I think, to help you remember what aperture does when it comes to depth. Do y'all know what depth of field is? Do you remember? There's shallow depth of field. Do you remember or not really? I know. What is a shallow depth of field? Remember? You know what that means? If you don't, it's okay. Mm-hmm. I'll explain it like this, okay? Because if you're talking about depth, okay, the easiest way for me to visualize it is to picture a swimming pool, okay? And if you're inside a swimming pool, let's just say that the swimming pool is shallow, has the shallow end, right? When you first get in, and as you go further into the pool, it gets deeper, right? It slopes until you get to the deepest part, all right? So when we're talking about depth of field, if you were to, my visual that I'm thinking about doing is I'm going to have a swimming pool. It's just going to have blue paper for blah, blah, blah. And the depth is going to be measured, the shallow part, a little bit deeper, okay? But if you were to turn that on its side, and you're actually looking at a field, flowers or trees or doesn't matter, or on land, but you turn the field on its, or you turn the pool on its side, and you look at it and it's just grass now, we'll say, or a football field. You can think about it like that too, okay? If I'm standing on a football field and I'm in the end zone, where you make a touchdown, Then again, if you're standing there and you look all the way to the opposite side, where the end zone is, and then you've got all these measurements in between. Well, a shallow depth of field means that there's only a small portion that's going to be in focus. A small portion when it comes to the depth. So if you're a shallow depth of field when it comes to aperture is a small number. So you can remember it that way. Small number of aperture, which would be your F whatever, F1.8, F1.2, whatever. So a shallow depth of field means a small area of focus. A larger or a deep depth of field means more stuff in focus. So the higher that number, the more stuff in focus. The lower that number, the less stuff in focus. So if you're talking about getting further away, the only way things will, that it can be, everything will be in focus is if you're doing a flat surface. Like let's just say somebody, Sister Williamson painted a beautiful picture, right? And you want to take a picture of that. It's completely flat. So it doesn't matter if there's nothing behind it and nothing in front of it. So you can go right up to it and you can shoot it at 1.8, or you can shoot it at 22. And it doesn't really matter because there's nothing in front of it or behind it. So it's all going to be in focus if it's flat. But if it's not flat, or if it's people that are standing, even if people are standing kind of in line, if one person is a little bit further back than this person and you have down a shallow depth of field, the person you have the focal point on is going to be focused. People behind them or in front of them are not going to be focused. And that works out well if it's just one person, right? And you want everything except that one person to be in focus, or out of focus, and you want the person to be in focus. Shallow depth of field is great. Even two people is usually okay. But when you start getting into more people or more stuff you want to have to go up on Earth to a higher number on your aperture. So more stuff will be in focus. Got it? But you're also cutting the light when you go up on that. Okay. All right. Now we're going to get into pictures. So let's look at these and y'all tell me. I feel like the colors are not really. Okay. I don't want to mess with anything, so I'm not sure. Okay, well, I was going to turn the lights off, but I guess I won't. Anyway, picture on the left. What are y'all's thoughts about that picture? When you look at it, what do you find interesting or whatever? What are your thoughts about the picture? Throw it out there. Yes. Barely, but yes, that's correct. Yeah, that's a really good observation. So what that means is that the photographer that took this picture was using a shallow depth of field because she's in focus, but what's right in front of her is not in focus. And you can kind of see barely behind her, there's like an archway. That's not in focus either, which means what's in front of her and what's behind her, neither one are in focus. That was a shallow depth of field. Okay. Talk about this one. What did you say? I agree. I'm trying to do the lights. Is it getting darker? Oh, it's here, turn those off. Okay, I don't know how to do it. All right, so picture on the right. This was probably also a really shallow depth of field because whatever is behind her, you can't even tell what it was. It just looks like a blank, on both sides. It's super blurred out. But she is perfectly in focus. And even this area, all of it's perfectly in focus. First of all, I really like both of these pictures a lot. And I like them because of the shallow depth of field that was used, but I also think, especially the one on the right, I think it's a really cute pose. She looks really cute. And the most important thing when you're doing a close-up picture like this, if you're only going to have one thing that's in focus, it should be her eyes, and her eyes are in focus. They look good, the whole picture. To me, it all looks good. All right. And then we've got this. So I'll just let y'all know that Melissa, my daughter-in-law, sent me these pictures because when she came to her photography class last time, that was the first photography class she's ever been to. She has an interest in photography, but she doesn't know that much about photography. So I let her take one of my cameras and one of my lenses home, and I told her just practice, try it. So I asked her to send me some of the pictures that she got that she liked, and she sent me these. And I think they're really cute. When I look at it, I'm not really sure why this part is like really blown out right here. It looks super bright. There was probably some kind of light coming from right there, but I don't know what it was. And for me, I like the picture a lot. That part is a little bit distracting because it's really bright. Same with the other one on his hair. It's a really cute picture. I love his face. But his hair looks like it looks white. He does not have white hair. But it's still a really cute picture, and you could probably edit these in Lightroom and adjust it enough to make it look good. The one on the top, and well, both of them, those spots might be blown out too much to make them look completely natural, but you could still fix them so they look better. But I think they're really good shots, especially for someone new to photography. Okay, so looking at these pictures, y'all have any thoughts, feedback? Anything? All right, let's look at the one on the left. So what are some things that you like and some things that you don't like and things that you find interesting about the picture? India. Name something you like or you don't like or that you find interesting. I like the building that's where the cozy. I really go ahead. I would like adjusted kind of like content with the straight. Okay. What about you? Yep. Yep. I agree. Okay. Yeah. So when I looked at it, I immediately was like, well, this part across the top is too bright. I don't like how, I mean, it looks okay, but it's too bright. And the rule of thumb is that your subject should always be the brightest part of your image, not something else that takes away from your subject. So basically, all these shadow areas, those shadows can be pulled up in Lightroom. You can make just this area, the shadows can be pulled up. That highlights at the top the shadows up. Mm-hmm. Yep. I agree. Okay. So I just want to tell y'all really quickly that I took these pictures in 2008, and I was actually very excited about the pictures when I took them. And at the time, I thought, these are the best pictures I've ever taken. I was so happy and so excited about them. I look at them today, and I'm like, why didn't I fix it? Like, I didn't adjust anything. I didn't edit them. Because back then, I don't even know if I had Lightroom or not. I don't think I did. So I gave them to her just as they are, but it's okay. She's my niece, and she's fine. But anyway, so. All right, now we have this one. Thoughts on the picture to the left? Rapid fire. One word or two words that come to your mind when you look at it. Seth. Yeah. I agree. So I like it. Honestly, every photographer is different. This for me is not my style. I'm not crazy about somebody being that close. Like my preference, if I would have shot this, I would have had her back up probably 6 to 10 feet, and I would have used a long lens, and I would have shot through the branches to get a little bit of that blurred out of the branches, kind of framing her face. I would have been able to see more of her. But for me personally, I'm not crazy about having the leaves coming in front of all on her face and the limb going across her neck. For me personally, I'm not crazy about it. And I definitely would have pulled the shadows up. Okay, one on the right. We'll start with Andy. Yeah, anything you changed on it or really good? What about you, Seth? Leave it or change it? Well, for me personally, I know taking pictures of little kids like this, babies, it is like so hard because they move every 3 seconds, less than 3 seconds. They move. It's hard to get them smiling or making a cute face. So for me, I think this looks good. I actually like. I mean, the background is not blown out. Her face is not blown out. She's perfectly in focus. I think the curl comes on. It's really cute too. But anyway, I like it. I think it's really good. These are more of Melissa's. So the one on the left, again, on his nose and on his hand, it's a little bit blown out and a tiny bit in his hair, but that part doesn't really bother me. But you know what? For the expressions and the interaction between dad and the kid, it's just like you have to catch it when you can catch it. So technically, it doesn't have to be perfect when you've got something really awesome going on like that. But those are things that I would probably edit and try to fix are the bright spots on it. But other than that, it looks a little bit yellow orange too. So in white balance, she could have changed it to tungsten and it would take that yellow orange away. The one on the right, I think it's super cute. The focal point, actually, it almost looks like the focal point is like right here. And since you can't see his eyes, the focal point should always be on their eyes, but you can't see his eyes, so it's like right here on the sunglasses. But I kind of like that the shallow depth of field right there, because his hat is out of focus. But then right there, his sunglasses, well, the right side of his sunglasses are in focus, left side are out of focus. That's a super shallow depth of field, and I think it's really cute. But I'm also kind of partial because that's my grandson. So, all right. Okay. So, picture on the left. What are your thoughts? Okay, wait. Don't say too long. We're going to run out of time. So, when I looked at this picture on the left, okay, again, the day that I took this, which was probably in 2008, 2009, Miss Kiera was about 6 years old. And the thing I like about it are the leading lines. That's the first thing I saw about this. I was like, I love the leading lines. Boom, 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 boom. All those columns. And on this right-hand side, I love all that. But through the focus, she's the focus, and she's not in focus. I think my focal point was over here on the left. Almost looks like it's on that wall. This thing is, it almost looks like it's the focal point, not her. She's too soft. She's not. Focus isn't there. But yeah, whatever. And then the one on the right, I could have pulled the shadows up a little bit more on her, and it's just that's about it. I mean, she's cute, but the photographer didn't do a great job. All right, we're back to these again, and same thing. He looks, Junior looks kind of yellow, and he's not yellow. So tungsten lights, that could have been fixed, but it can be fixed in post also. But the way he's holding the paws of the dog is like super cute. I think the whole picture is like really cute. It's just a little bit too yellow, but other than that, it's good. The one on the right is a cute picture of a dog. I think it could have been zoomed in on the dog a little bit more and maybe blurred out the background a little bit more to make him really the focus. But yeah, other than that, it's good. And so some people that aren't here did send in some of the pictures. So what are y'all's thoughts about this one? What's that? Yeah, I think the reflection in the water where you can see the sky and the trees, that's so pretty. I love it. I love the colors. And I don't really mind black being in there that much. I think the shadows really pulled up just a little bit. You can see more of the details of the trees, both in the actual trees and in the reflection. But I took this picture actually, but I took it probably around 2005 or something like that. I don't know what year. And at the time, I was like, this is the best picture I'll ever take in my life. I love it. I was super happy and excited about it. Okay. So, yeah, this was like for his first birthday. When I was looking at this, I really don't like the one on the right hand side on this one because he's out of focus. But you know, it's cute. But anyway, and then the one on the right, the focal point. Well, it's like I can tell I went in after and added the vignette of like blur around it, and it kind of got the top of his head and whatever. Cute expression though, but it's just, to me, these pictures, other than the subject, I'm not crazy about them. But they're okay. I mean, whatever. Okay, if you had to rate both of these, we'll just do them both together, on a scale of 1 to 5, 5 being really awesome, amazing, 1 being like not very good at all. Where do they be? Okay. 3, 3. I would say somewhere between a 1 and a 2. Really, she's a very pretty girl, and that makes the picture look better. She's pretty. But other than that, they're not really all that great. But when I first got into photography, I put a black curtain protective on, and I was taking pictures like this. And so the one on the left, it all goes black behind her, and that to me it looks a little bit better than the one on the right. The one on the right, you can kind of see the wrinkles in the thing behind her. So the mistake that I made, one of the mistakes, is that I put her too close to it. I should have had her about 6 feet away from it, at least. But, and it would have shown up. It would have been a better picture all the way around. Okay, the one on the left. The one on the left is not, it's okay. It's okay. It's, the focus is not really all that great. It's not all that sharp. I feel like all the colors are not exactly right either. They're just like, I just feel like it's an okay picture. The one on the right, I like it a lot better. I think it's prettier. But I'd say both of these probably about 12 years apart. So the one on the left and then the one on the right. And I'm really just kind of trying to show that the more you do photography, you know, you start noticing things. And again, the one on the left, that was my best friend before I church, named Lauren. And I was so proud of that picture. I was like super excited. I was like, this is amazing. Like I thought she would want to have it printed and like put on her wall and all kinds of cool stuff. And she was just like, oh. And yeah, that was about it. Thoughts? Step in the background, like the sky. Okay. Yeah, yeah, I think her bouquet is in focus. And that was probably done purposely. My guess would be this again is a shallow depth of field because this is the closest to the camera, but it's not in focus. This is the middle, and it is in focus. And then she is further back, and she's not in focus. So the focal point was obviously on this, and I'm guessing that's done purposely. The sky is a little bit blown out, but other than that, I think it's a pretty picture. And the girl probably wanted, you know, a picture of her. Okay. So, I think I did too many of these. Okay. These are ones that I took on Honda in about 2005, 2006. And at the time, I thought they were super awesome. These are my niece, both of them. And that I'm looking at now. And the green from the grass is like super contrasty, ugly. I don't like it at all. if I were to do this now, I would crop it in, get rid of that grass, the one on the left. And I still think it's an okay photo. It's, they were outside playing and whatever. The one on the right, I think it's still to this day, I think that's okay. It could have been a little bit sharper, especially on her eyes, but it's okay. It's one of my favorite pictures. I wish I could claim it, but I didn't take it. I love pictures, I love doing pictures in the mirror. These are actually a little bit more challenging to get than you would think, because you have to put the focal point on the reflection, not on the person. I mean, not on the back of their head or whatever. You want that part to be out of focus, kind of, and then the reflection to be in focus. And if the mirror is dirty, or if there is the light's kind of weird, it's hard to get your focus on the reflection because your camera just doesn't like to do it. It's actually kind of challenging to do, but this turned out really pretty. That's one of India's, and I like it a lot. Does this place look familiar? Yeah. This is actually kind of where we are. It's just on the other side of the bridge. But anyway, this was my son when this was on his 14th birthday. I took him to take pictures, and he almost made me drop my camera. The one on the left, he pretended that he was falling backwards into the water, and it was before I had my strap around my neck. This is when I started putting my strap around my neck, because I was just holding my camera like this, and he goes, like that. And then I was already in the middle of taking the picture, and I almost dropped my camera to run over there, and then he sat up and was like, and I went, you're such a 14-year-old. But anyway, I still kind of like these to this day because I like the leading lines of the bridge. I think that what would have been better is if I would have had a more shallow depth of field and had the focal point just on him, and the rest of it would have been blurred out. More blurred in the background on both of these, I think would have been a better picture. His face is not super, sharp like that. But anyway, they're still like, I started shooting at this place and I still shoot here all the time. I use these bridges all the time. Okay, so this one to me is kind of similar to the one with the reflection on the water. I like the picture a lot, but the two things that I see are that the shadows are just too dark. Shadows need to be pulled up, and it's also a tiny bit unlevel. It's a little bit to the left. So I would level it and then pull the shadows up. But I took this one at the same property on the same day as I took the one with the sunset. It was just on a different side of the property that that was one of my brother's girlfriends back in the day. We were at her house. It was her parents' house. Okay. So these pictures, as you can see, they were taken in 2005. The one on the left was in my backyard. The one on the right was down the street at the park. But the one on the left, I like the picture, but I have them way too close to the tree. I needed to have the tree minimum 6 feet. Then the tree would have not been touching their heads or looked like it touched their heads, and it would have just been a better picture. I think the lighting other than that is okay on the one on the left. The one on the right, I cannot stand that red truck in the background. Super distracting for me. And then the focus is not super sharp on them, and it's too much of the background. So I don't know what I was shooting it at, probably 5.6, or I don't know what I had on there, so I'm telling back then. But I just want y'all to see like what I did right and what I did wrong in each picture. So this was like my first, when I was getting into shooting mirrors. I love the idea of shooting mirrors and getting a reflection. And so the one on the left is like, um, I think it's okay. It's, just a picture at home. But I kind of like it because you can see both sides of her face. But, and then this one too, I like it. But I think the shadows need to be pulled up so you can see Maddie the dog. That was Diesel. And I see a flash on there too. I must have had the flash on or something, or I don't know what the shadow is. The top part that's all bright. Most likely was flash. And or I don't really know what it was, but I don't like that part. It's distracting. Okay. So this would be Preston and Lena. But and these were at my house with a black background. I think I got them a little bit further away from the background in these pictures, so you can't really see any wrinkles in the background. The light's not hitting the background too much. And other than the one on the left, I think his face could have been a little more in focus, especially his eyes could have been a little sharper. But other than that, I'm okay with that. The one on the right, I kind of like it. I think the light is hitting more of the flower than her face, and it would have been better if the light was over to the left, so it was more on her face, and her eyes could have been a little bit sharper too. And this was the first photo session that I ever got paid for, that it was an engagement session, and I did know the couple. I worked with her gynae. But this is another one. At the time, I thought these were really good pictures. I was so proud of them, but they're really not very good. They're like, they're not terrible. They're just not very good. They're okay. And it's a beginner. I didn't charge them very much. I charged them like $50. But anyway, and then that thing on the right, it dates that photo because that was like a cool thing to do back then. Was like you take a black and white picture and or you take a color picture and you leave parts of it in color, it was like a little phase. So, but leaving just the sky, nah, it wasn't very good. But and then I actually like the one on the left. I would have preferred that her hood was pulled back just a little bit more so you could see more of her face. But it's an okay picture. The one on the right, I kind of like it too. It's not super sharp, but practice. These are practice, y'all. So you see, I don't know what year this was. It's probably like 2006, 2007. Same thing with this one. So the one on the left, that was my ex-sister-in-law's baby, and she's a senior in high school or junior in high school now. But shadows should have been pulled up. But other than that, mom's hands. And then the one on the right is my nephew, one of my nephews, and I think he's like 16 now. But I had that little rocking horse on a black background and lights set up, and his parents were happy with it, and it was fine. It's okay. I think it's kind of cute. And then same thing, the one on the left, two nephews and my niece, and they were at my house and set up a black background and took those pictures. The one on the right is my brother and one of my brothers and his family. Both of those girls are now married, and the one on the left has a third kid. And yeah, so this was obviously a long time ago. I don't like that picture at all. It's not it's blown out in certain places, it's grainy. Other than the background a little bit, I like part of that background, but that's about the only part of it that I like. And their pose was okay. All right, now I was going to talk about Lightroom, but I've already kind of talked about Lightroom. But if you don't have Lightroom, that's how you get it, but you're going to get in with India, most likely on Lightroom, and start doing some editing. But what I'm talking about, you've already seen Lightroom at my house. Cami, you've used Lightroom, have you? No? Okay. Well, we're going to use it in a little bit. I want to show what you can do in Lightroom. So this is one of the things that you can do in Lightroom. So I'm almost embarrassed to say, but whatever. I just recently took this picture. So the one on the left, I took this picture, but I had not checked my settings. That was the first picture I took when we got there. And I took the picture to get my lighting. But anyway, so the one on the left, obviously super duper blown out, way far gone. But I edited it in Lightroom, and that's what it looks like. I cropped it. It's the same picture. I just edited it and turned it black and white. And it's still, the one on the right is still not a great picture. It's not great. But it could be usable. If I would have really needed it, like, if that was a wedding picture, that was with some kind of action going on that I wanted to capture that thing, that's what Lightroom can do for you. If your settings were wrong and it was blown out, a lot of times you can bring it back if you're shooting raw. And you can at least do something with it. So this one is a kind of sad example. So my son and my daughter-in-law got married during COVID, and the place where they were supposed to have their wedding, the venue, wouldn't let them come to the venue, so they ended up having this little outdoor wedding where they only had 10 people. They had already paid for the charter for it to be included, so I didn't take any pictures. There were only 10 of us there, and this is one of the wedding pictures that the paid photographer got, and it's terrible. It's terrible. I mean, this is my nephew, Preston, and look how white his face is. There were actually some, I couldn't find those, but there were worse than this. Like, you couldn't even see his eyes, his nose, or his mouth in some of the pictures. You see a white blob where his face should be. So, weddings are like super important. If you're ever going to take pictures at a wedding, please don't take pictures like this. You need to get better if you're going to take pictures at a wedding, in my opinion. All right, now we're going to get back into some technical stuff. Okay, never mind. We have to stop. That's kind of a bummer. I had more stuff, but oh well, we're done. We have to, because we have to put the tables back and everything. So I guess we're going to stop right here. Uploading and organizing images. That's where we're going to stop for today. But yeah, do y'all have questions or anything?